So in the previous video, we looked at the structure of the cholinergic synapses, and for this one, what we are just going to be focusing on is the role of synapses or the function of synapses. Now, if you go online and read about synapses or synapses, they will give you extremely complicated answers because the synapses are exactly that. They are very complicated and complex structures. But for the purpose of the exam, we just have to keep the functions of the synapses quite simple. Okay, we have to keep it quite simple. So we condense the function or the role of the synapses into two. Number one, it is just to make sure that the impulse travels in one direction. How? Very simple. So you can see the structure here. I told you when you see that ball-like structure, the synaptic knob, that is the presynaptic neuron, and that cup-like structure is the postsynaptic neuron. When the impulse reaches the end of the presynaptic neuron, automatically what happens is the impulse will be generated in the postsynaptic neuron. Okay, we saw how this happens in the previous video. You can refer to that if you need to. But the impulse will never travel in the opposite direction. It will never start from the postsynaptic neuron and then move towards the presynaptic neuron. This will never happen. How does our body ensure that this will never happen? Well, the first thing is the neurotransmitters, the vesicles with the neurotransmitters are always in the presynaptic neuron side, and the receptors are always on the postsynaptic neuron side. So this ensures that when exocytosis happens, the neurotransmitters have no choice but to move from the presynaptic side to the postsynaptic side through diffusing from an area of higher to lower concentration. So in this diagram here, it's always going to move from left to right, and they can only bind to the receptors. So they can move randomly, but where are the receptors located? The receptors are only located on the postsynaptic neuron. So they have no choice but to bind to the postsynaptic neuron and generate the impulse on the other side. So this ensures that the impulse will only travel in one direction. Simple enough. The other function of the synapses or synapses is to allow interconnection of nerve pathways. Now, sounds complicated, but it's not. What it just means is, what I'm drawing here is I'm just drawing out one presynaptic neuron, as you can see over there. But how many postsynaptic neurons am I drawing over there? 3. So you can see that individual neurons can connect, like one individual neuron here can be connected to multiple other neurons. Like one presynaptic neuron can be connected to three other postsynaptic neurons. In reality, one neuron can be connected to thousands of other neurons as well because of this branching. That is why the dendrites have that increased surface area. So remember, we talked about this before. I'm showing you the structure of the motor neuron, the dendrites. The dendrites have this kind of branch-like structures to increase the surface area so they can be connected to multiple other neurons. So this is good because it allows us to produce a more efficient response. What do I mean by a more efficient response? You see, okay, imagine for a moment a ball is hurtling towards you. Now, when a ball is hurtling towards you, you want to catch the ball, right? Does your arm move in a very robotic way? Like, does it move like first you lift your shoulders, then you bend your elbow, then you move your fingers to catch, you move your wrist. Then after that, you move your fingers to catch the ball. No, you don't move in a very robotic way. Our movements are not static. So I always ask my students these questions. How do you try to catch the ball? And then my students will immediately, they'll show this action where they lift their arms up and then their hands are moving. And it's all happening simultaneously. You see, we move in a very fluid way. What do I mean by we move in a very fluid way? Like, for example, when the impulse reaches the end of our neuron, like for example, the information here is a ball is hurtling towards you. It sends the impulse to 3 other neurons at the same time, and they send the impulse to multiple other neurons where they send it to the leg muscles, they can send it to the core muscles, and they can also send it to the arms and shoulders simultaneously. So when you produce a response, your response is not robotic. Your response is very fluid, like you can jump every parts of the body can respond at the same time to catch the ball in a very fluid and extremely efficient manner. This is what is meant by the interconnection of nerve pathways. Interconnection of nerve pathways just means that when the impulse reaches the end of the presynaptic neuron, it can send the information to multiple other neurons at the same time. And those multiple other neurons can send information to different effectors simultaneously. This allows us to produce a very efficient and non-robotic response